Thank you, Ali, for having me. It's a great honor to be part of this great movement, great network, and again, to be part of this great minds that have fired up to make sure that we take the action of climate change initiative to another level. Can you put me on my slides, please? Yeah, so I'll be looking at policy education, the cornerstone of a sustainable Africa climate change initiative. I believe that when the idea of ACAI came into mind, one of the areas that ACAI was looking at is to how to kind of strengthen policy formulation and policy implementation in Africa, and also how to make sure that education, formal, non-formal, and informal, is mainstreamed in our educational system. Yes, we can talk about all beautiful initiatives, but if we don't have a good educational system, we don't have a good policy, most of the ideas will not have a very sustainable route in Africa. Can you take me to the next slide? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so Africa is often described as a continent most at risk to the negative effect of climate change. According to the Climate Change Vulnerability Index for 2015, 7 of the 10 countries most at risk from climate change are all from Africa. Next slide. Why? The perceived lack of what? Capacity from Africans and their governments to fight climate change. Next slide. Next slide, please. Its impact in Africa. We are looking at impact on agriculture and food, impact on human health, impact on shelter, impact on national security, and impact on vulnerable population. The list goes on and on and on. Next slide, please. So these are some of the proposed solutions that we have to drive ACAI initiative. We are looking at biotechnology, we are looking at research at all levels, policy review, and education at all levels. Next slide, please. We're also looking at the thematic areas for climate change education and consideration, advancing policy, transforming learning and training environment, building capacities of educators and trainers, empowering and mobilizing youth, its core component, accelerating sustainable solutions at all levels. Next slide, please. Again, we are looking at the various channels, and under Article 4, Paragraph 1 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the parties came up with these thematic areas. For the sake of time, I wouldn't want to go into details, but once the presentation is out there, you might want to go through it. Education, training, and public awareness, and it's very much explained in this document. Next slide, please. Where has this worked? Inside Africa. Ghana added climate change to the curriculum of basic education. In this case, Ghana has trained over 600 primary school teachers on climate change and green economy. The Ghana Education Service introduced climate change into all subjects of new primary school curriculum, particularly science, and that's a huge step. South Africa, through the Keep Cool project, built teachers and school leaders of secondary schools capacities to make climate change education part of the school and classroom practice. Mauritius has about 250,000 students are learning about climate change and environment in their school lessons. And in Kenya, systematic integration of education for sustainable development into the country's educational policies. And in Madagascar, disaster risk reduction mainstreamed into the curriculum. So these are very interesting areas to look at. Again, yes, we still need to improve. Next slide, please. And then go to the next slide, please. The Pan-African Center for Climate Policy. We have a vision to achieve for Africa a cleaner and safer environment in line with the UNFCCC protocols and policies. Climate change policies, creation, training of climate change core, next slide, members across Africa. We work with community-based organizations, government organizations, non-governmental organizations, private practitioners, environmental rights groups, and individual planners. Next slide, please. How are we involved in creating a path towards a regenerative future? These are some of the projects that we've done over the years. Case study in Nigeria, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in Cross River State, Nigeria. Our approach was using our climate change manual to train volunteers, hosting capacity building workshops for National Youth Service Corps students to help reduce emissions and enhance livelihoods. Next slide, please. And in Cameroon, next slide, please. And in Cameroon, we have the mangrove degraded site in Cameroon. The approach, we've tried to implement educational, again, and awareness raising workshops, distribution of seedlings to farmers within local communities to engage and to encourage agroforestry, and setting up a committee to carry out planting of mangrove wildland along the degraded mangrove landscape. Next slide, please. And in Ghana, we developed the Rural Dweller Project. Another Rural Dweller Project, we have training volunteers and communities on the use of climate change manual in primary schools. So on the picture there, you see one of our international volunteers from Canada, and Adam Ernst, who is a teacher, was working in Ghana with our local partners to kind of introduce our climate change manual to schools. And we're very happy that the government of Ghana has taken up the initiative to introduce climate change in the educational curriculum at the primary level. And we encourage other countries to do same. Why is climate change education important for policy formulation? The answer is straight up. It's right there. Next slide. It will raise, yes, why is climate change education important for policy formulation? And the answer is straightforward again. It will raise a generation of competent person for effective climate actions. Next slide. So we have the stakeholder involvement. So you look at the various charts, the stakeholder involvement. And we're looking at how hands on decks. Next slide. We have schools, we have researchers, we are looking at politicians, NGOs, activists, local authorities, business sectors, religious bodies, all coming together to have the competent and effective climate change policy and education. And my final class. In conclusion, climate change, first slide please. In conclusion, climate change is significantly impacting upon the education sector, and education in its broader sense has a critical role to play in response. And let me quote Sir Nicholas Stern, my favorite quote: fostering a shared understanding of the nature of climate change and its consequences is critical in shaping behavior, as well as in underpinning national and international action. Educating those currently at school about climate change will help shape and sustain future policymaking and a broad public and international debate. It also supports today's policymakers in taking strong action now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.